We really appreciate you all being here. And I see a lot of people are dressed up too, which is really nice to see. So thank you
Hi.
all. Hopefully everyone got their morning coffee or tea or breakfast of some kind. So a lot of people are dressed up too, which is really nice to see. So thank you all.
All right, Sarah, I think we can go ahead and get started if you're good.
Yep, I think we're good to get started.
Okay, all right. So good morning, everyone. Thanks again so much for joining. My name is Priya, and I was HOSA president in 2018. And I'll let Sarah introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Fleischman, and I was HOSA president in 2019. So I directly followed Priya. And we're really thrilled to have all of you join us this morning. And we hope that this is an insightful workshop for you. And we're just going to share our paths to leadership through HOSA. So we'll get started. So first, we're going to talk about our member and competitor years.
So we hope you enjoy these pictures because we definitely dug them up from the past, and we just thought it would be nice to kind of share these memories with you all. So please enjoy it.
So I'll kind of transition and start. So my member and competitor kind of story was a little bit atypical. I actually went to two different high schools. So I switched regions. I'm from Florida, by the way. So that gives you kind of a perspective of my state and the size of it. So I actually switched high schools, but my first high school, I was actually in a medical academy. So that's this lovely picture with my bright blue scrubs. So I started in a health science academy. So I was in a medical program, and I was able to compete my first 2 years at that chapter. And then when I moved schools, I then transitioned. And I wasn't in a health science program at the time, but it was a collegiate high school. So I had different opportunities and was able to go through that way. But all 4 years, I did 4 different competitive events. So that was really fun. And I think my biggest takeaway from my years as a member and a competitor is, it really gives you some time to be resilient and work on yourself. I think if I didn't have those years to try out different events and learn more about myself, I don't think I could have been as an effective leader in HOSA as I hope I was. So that's kind of my biggest takeaways. And then Priya, if you want to share yours.
Yeah, so I'm from Georgia. So when I joined high school, I joined this organization pretty quickly because I was in the healthcare pathway. So it was tied, it was co-curricular. So I was able to join. The biggest thing for me is I think I noticed that there were a lot of different service opportunities, but at some points, it can, when you're presented with so many different options, it's kind of like figuring out, where your skills are going to be put to use best. And so I think it was a lot of learning in that regard. And I think I definitely learned a lot about myself in regards to what I like to do. So I figured out pretty quickly, like I like people interaction. So any sort of service opportunity that, allowed me to interact with, maybe students or members of the community, I would always try to sign up for those. There are 2 pictures here on the bottom. One is it's basically
I love your
me
Krispy Kreme hat.
I know, my Krispy Kreme hat. And so that was a fundraiser that we had. So fundraisers and service projects were 2 things that I was really, really fond of back in high school. And I just kind of realized that there's a lot that goes into it, when you're trying to raise funds for your chapter. And I think that's something that we can all agree upon is, how do we keep our chapter on track? What can we be doing to help? And I think when you join high school, when you become a member, it may feel like sometimes you don't know where to start. But when you realize that these are the kinds of opportunities that exist, like fundraisers and service projects, and you make an initiative to kind of get involved, it can take you a long way. So as funny as it looks in the Krispy Kreme hat, it definitely did help me realize how important it was to put my foot forward and help my chapter raise money.
Yeah.
The other picture down here at the bottom is me at a school recruitment event. So we were recruiting rising ninth graders, and just telling them about HOSA so that when they entered high school, they kind of already knew that this organization existed. So again, I loved people interaction. Those are the types of service projects that I would try to be a part of. And then up top is me as a competitor. And so Sarah and I are laughing because these pictures are just so dated. But I competed in human growth and development, and then I also competed in biomedical debate. So both wonderful experiences, and very different experiences, actually. That's what I really enjoyed, is I got to choose two different events.
Hmm.
So in different years. So when I did human growth and development, it taught me a lot about my test taking skills. And then when I did biomedical debate, it just taught me a lot about how I really love to speak. So very, very grateful for both of those experiences.
I think that's a really good point, Priya. Like, also just thinking about the differences in events. So, as a competitor, like you said, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming with how many choices there are, and it might be hard to find a competitive event. And I see some people nodding, so I think there's some agreement there. But the fact that we both did different events every year, I think shows how versatile we can be in HOSA, and the different skills we can learn. Like, I did HOSA Bowl one year, and then another year so that was like obviously a group, and then I did health education, which was just a pair, and then I did clinical specialty, which is by myself. And I think I learned that variety kind of taught me really unique teamwork skills, and that sometimes I think I enjoyed clinical specialty the best. I think I like the autonomy of having, ownership to do my own project and stuff. So I think that's a really good point with competitions. You can kind of switch it up every year, and not feel pressured to perform a certain way. So
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. I agree.
You-
Um, so leading into the next part of our workshop here, so the next thing that Sarah and I got involved with was chapter leadership. And so, Sarah, do you want to start with yours?
Sure. So I actually got involved in chapter leadership kind of later on. So when I switched high schools, and I started actually my junior year, which is, I know, a little bit atypical for some folks. Some people want to run for a chapter officer their freshman or sophomore year. For me, I think I really enjoyed that competitive side first, and then was able to learn and then transition into a chapter officer position. So my school that I went to is actually only juniors and seniors. So I was like the junior class president, and then moved on to be the senior class president. But Florida is also broken up into regions. So during this time, I was also able to serve as a regional officer. So it's almost like broken up by counties, if you will. So that was a really unique opportunity. And, just having that ownership of a chapter, and I think Priya can probably agree with this, it sets you at a different level, and you want to bring everyone together and help your chapter. So that's like, I think, the first step of making a HOSA community. So the pictures that I have are, pretty cringy, but it's fine. So this first one on the left, that was a banner at our region. So we need to get an updated one with a new patch. And then the top right was when it was like a career fair type thing. So we were sharing what HOSA does. And this is actually at a state college in our area that my school is located on. So we were able to share what HOSA was doing. And then yeah, I just included this picture of my Happy HOSA Days sweater because I spent a lot of time on it, and I thought someone would get a laugh out of it. But we had like a holiday event, and I was just really proud of that sweater. But um, during those times as a chapter officer, I learned a lot about HOSA. You learn or I was able to have a lot of autonomy. My advisor was able to give me some roles in helping people choose a competitive event, and get people situated when they had to go to a regional conference or a state conference. So that was kind of my general experience, and says too. So
Yeah, and so I think adding on to that, I
oh,
ran
sorry.
for I I ran for chapter leadership my sophomore year of high school. And so when I started out, I think the first thing I realized is exactly what Sarah's saying, how much autonomy you have. And so if you really think about it, right, like the boundaries are what you set them to be. Now, obviously, you have rules and regulations that you have to follow to keep everything in order, but your creativity has no bounds, right? So I think that was one of the coolest things as a chapter officer is when my advisor approached us at the very beginning of the year and said, okay, what ideas do you have? Right. And I've been a part of those discussions. I had been a part of those discussions before and, brainstorming cool ideas for fundraisers or brainstorming new ideas for service projects, but then actually being, the lead point, being able to
Hmm.
execute step by step and see how to make something happen for your chapter. That was the first time that I had ever experienced something like that. And I remember the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta picture is actually really special to me because that was probably one of my very first networking meetings that I had as a chapter officer. And I remember walking in and talking to the community coordinator, the community outreach coordinator at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta one summer and saying, hey, I'm secretary of my chapter and we'd really like to be involved with children's. And I was so nervous before going in there because I was like, why are they going to listen to me? I mean, she
Hmm.
probably talks to so many people every day. But I went in with my advisor and with our chapter president, and it was probably one of the most meaningful conversations I've ever had. And I think as a chapter officer back then, as a student back then, even, I think I always thought that you had to be an adult to have these conversations. You had to
Yeah.
be in a high position of power to be able to have conversations and to be able to make things happen for your
Hmm.
chapter, but you don't. And the truth is, any one of us, whether we're in a position of leadership or not, can be our own leader, right? And we can go out there and we can push and kind of get something that we want if we take the right steps and if we take action. And that was kind of my first experience with that. And we set up volunteer projects with Children's Healthcare of Atlanta throughout the year. And the school continues to work with them. So it was really cool to be a part of that process and understand that you can be your own leader at any given point in time. And you don't necessarily have to be in a position of leadership. And it was just really, really valuable. And so
Yeah.
I think my chapter officer years is when I built a lot of those networking skills. And when I started to realize
Yeah.
there's a lot in the back end that we can be doing every single day to build
Yeah.
opportunities for our chapter. So, yeah, that
Yeah.
would be my takeaway.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, kind of bouncing off of that too, just thinking about the advocacy piece, like you were saying, that when you started talking about that, it kind of brought back some memories for me of, going into local businesses and saying, "Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm from HOSA, and can you support our chapter in some way?" And I think there is really good reception, and people really are super involved in wanting to help, youth and wanting to help people who are interested in going into healthcare. So you're right. And I think I had a lot more responsibility as a chapter officer to try and push for the growth and, to have positive experiences for all of our chapter members. So that's a really good point, Priya. So we're actually going to head into our next slide, which I accidentally clicked before, which was our years as state officer. So I'll let Priya take this one over first.
Yeah, so state officer year. So I ran for state office, I want to say towards the end of high school. My senior year of high school or my junior year of high school.
Mhm.
So I ran for state office. I think it was my senior year of high school. Yeah. And it was an incredible experience. A lot more networking on this level. But what I will say is I think these are the years when I realized there are differences at every single level, right? Like local, state, and national level. And I just think I was exposed to a greater level of detail at the state level that I hadn't been seeing at the local level. And so when we talk about, how do our local chapters, how do our state chapters, and how does the national chapter and international chapter work together to make HOSA happen and make HOSA so great? There's a level of detail at each level that I think we need to pay attention to and be aware of. And I was able to see that in my position as state officer. I remember I was on the Georgia HOSA Inc. board of directors at the time. I was able to sit as one of the student representatives. And that's probably one of the first times I realized that there's so much that goes into the back end of this organization. Very, very incredible to be able to see that. But when I thought about HOSA in high school as a member and competitor, I saw, service projects, I saw fundraisers, and I saw, the kind of the base of what we as members do and what we as future healthcare providers are going to be doing every single day. Um, but then the back end of how do we set up those opportunities? How do we fund those opportunities? What are those important conversations that we need to be having to make sure those members that we are serving are able to have the best experience they possibly can? So I think this is really where I fully understood the term servant leadership, because
Mhm.
I had the opportunity to sit in so many different meetings with my team, with my state advisor, go on several more networking trips to be able to understand that it really does take passion and conversation to be able to provide the best experiences for your members. And I think that's something in hindsight now, you know, I wish I had held on to that from the very beginning, because if I had realized that, it kind of changes the way that you act every single day. You're actively then thinking about, what is this conversation going to do, for the people around me and for myself, right? And so I think if I had that mentality, as a member competitor, even, I think I would have appreciated some of those conversations that I didn't know as networking back then,
Yeah.
even more. So it was incredible to see that at the state officer level. Definitely learned a lot of teamwork, because these officers, I mean, they came from all over the state, right? So they weren't from our area, they weren't from my area, they weren't from my county. And so it was just like, you really definitely were just thrown into a group, and you're like, okay, how do we make this work? And so incredible though, being able to team build. And I definitely know a lot of people, when they approach like these terms, it's kind of like thinking about, how's the team going to gel together, and what are we going to do to make sure that we all are on the same page. And you tend to get nervous sometimes about, what if we're not on the same page? But I think these 2 years that I had as a state officer taught me a lot about conversation, compromise, action plans, and thinking through how to think through every decision that we make. How does it impact not only us, but the people that we're serving? So very
Mhm.
valuable years. Sarah, you want to start with yours?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll kind of explain my journey to becoming a state officer. So I actually ran my junior year for Florida HOSA, and I didn't even make it past the exam. So I always like to tell people that, because I think, sometimes when you see an executive council member or you see a state officer, you think, oh man, they just made it there. They're perfect. They can do no wrong. But in fact, like, it was really hard, and it took me some time to bounce back from that. I had a picture, but I couldn't find it, of like, as soon as I found out that I didn't make it past the exam, like my face was just, I was just so mad and like so upset at myself. But that pushed me to run again senior year, and I was thankful to get elected and was able to serve 2 years with Florida HOSA. So kind of what Priya was saying too, this is when I think I really realized how much of a student-led organization HOSA is. And you kind of take that for granted when you're a member, and even a competitor. You're like, okay, I'm just here, I'll do my competition, go to all these awesome general sessions, go to create workshops like this one, and get to experience all these different things. But when you're responsible for making sure, or playing a key role rather, in a state, and a membership of a whole entire state, I think that's when my perspective was really like, okay, how can I switch my focus to, okay, this is no longer about me being a competitor or me being a member. This is about the greater good of my state's experience. So yeah, I was really fortunate to serve 2 years, and during those times, again, like Priya said, having two different teams, you learn what works for teamwork, what maybe doesn't work. And so Priya and I kind of served, I think, almost concurrently, in both
Yeah.
of our roles, which is really, really funny that our stories parallel super well together. But those times as a state officer, you're sometimes challenged, because you're responsible for being a representative for your state. And I think Priya was kind of saying, you're traveling to all these different counties, these different schools. I mean, I can think about waking up super early just to drive 2 hours to get to a high school to present, and share my hostess journey and my hostess story. So I think another key part is that when I was a state officer, I was able to attend a lot of like HOSA conferences themselves. So I was able to attend the Washington Leadership Academy. So that's I believe the bottom, or the right side, are my two teams and us attending WLA. And I think those type of experiences, I was just like, wow, there is so much I have to learn, and there's so much I can do for my state to bring back to my state. Um, and I think this is probably when Priya and I maybe first met, was, during these type of conferences and sessions. And, you're really able to meet and network with different state associations. And you're like, wow, this association has almost the same number of members we do, and this is how they do things. And you're able to bring that back to your state advisor and say, hey, this might not work for our state, but have we ever considered doing X or Y? And I think that's on your responsibility as a state officer, to constantly improve the membership's experience, making sure that if you do have regional officers, that they are heard and they're not feeling like, okay, they're just another stepping stone. And so that was my goal always as a state officer, was to make sure that my membership was heard. And my state advisor always says, a good leader leads, but a great leader serves. So that'll be a quote from Mr. Duvall, and that's something that I've kept with me even as we served on the executive council. Is how I can better serve our membership. So I think we will now transition into our time together,
Mhm.
which was on the executive council. So we have a lot of kind of silly pictures here too. But Priya, if you want to start off with your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So I ran for an executive council position a few years ago, and I'm trying to do the math, and I
I
had
know.
think, but it is honestly, it was probably one of the most memorable experiences even had. And I'm talking about even just the process of running, right? And so we'll get into the process of serving in a little bit here, but the process of running, I mean, I can't stress enough how much I learned in that process. We've been talking so much, right? Sarah and I have been talking so much about networking and the importance of conversation. And it's like it all comes together in that process. Because sure, you take an exam and sure, you realize that, especially when we were in person for ILC in the past, right? So in those times you would realize, oh, that's another candidate. But the one thing I appreciated about HOSA is I think even amongst candidates, it was just so easy to go up and have conversation because everyone kind of has that
Yeah.
same foundation, that same base, that same love for HOSA. And so it was never like I don't know how to approach you, you're running against me. I have
Yeah.
never experienced that. And it's always been so welcoming, so warm, and people were so ready to advocate and to network and to have that conversation.
Hmm.
So very incredible. And even in those conversations, we would learn so much about each other and what you've been doing this entire year with your chapter. And so
Yeah.
I think those conversations are just so memorable. When I was able to serve as president-elect and president, 2 very incredible years. Everything that we've talked about comes together in this piece, right? So from the local member competitor level of seeking out opportunity for yourself, to develop your skills, to be able to get yourself exposed to everything that's out there, from the state officer level of learning, okay, what goes on in the back end, and how do we network to make things happen, and then to this level of bringing it all together. Imagine,
Yeah.
like 7 other people, on your team who bring those same experiences and come
Hmm.
together, and you're able to talk about it and bounce off even more ideas, right? So it's like when you add more than one person to the picture, you have so many incredible minds that come together to bounce off ideas and to be able to build an incredible year together. So I think that's exactly how I would describe my experiences as an executive council member. HOSA truly is a student-led organization. And so I was very blessed, to be an executive council member for 2 years and to have incredible mentors, and incredible teams to work with. And the thing that I learned the most is that it's okay basically to have conversation where you realize that not everyone's on the same page, right? That's the beauty of
Yeah.
being in a team. I felt like up until that point, a lot of the times we're like, okay, are we on the same page? And we would always be, trying to rush to get on at the same page. But at this level, it's like, okay,
Hmm.
we have so many different minds, right? So how do we come to a consensus? How do we come to a decision about what's going to be best for our chapter? And I think those were some of the most incredible conversations that I had. Um, at this level, we did a lot of workshop leadership development with our state chapters, with our local chapters, a lot of networking, of course, at the International Leadership Conference. And then we had some special moments where we were able to represent HOSA on some conferences and some trips. And so that was also really meaningful. And so you see some of these pictures on this slide too from Sarah and me and some of the trips that we've been on. And so it's been really great, from the White House to New York City with the United Nations. We've had some incredible opportunities to be able to not only represent HOSA, but realize the role that we as students play in the health industry. And that
Hmm.
industry is literally tied everywhere we look. I mean, everywhere we go, health and healthcare has a role. And it's incredible that HOSA-Future Health Professionals is that pipeline of individuals who are going to fill those places. And so that was my aha moment as an executive council member.
Yeah. Well, Priya, I think I was super fortunate to have you as my mentor. So I think I might have gotten the best luck out of that. But
Now,
you
now,
know,
don't make me cry. I might
I know,
just tear
I know,
up.
I know. Priya's getting a little emotional on us, I see. But in a serious note, though, I think I was super lucky to have you and learn from you because, you had come off. We had come off of very similar storylines, so I felt like, you had always understood kind of what my mind was thinking or where I was going with the topic because we had shared experiences. But our team was an interesting dynamic, and you're right. I think having that ability, and that's what's so beautiful about the executive council. And I couldn't help but like keep smiling every time you brought something like that up because
Yeah.
it's so true. Like having people from, when you're a state officer, it's across the state. Okay, I'm still a Floridian. You can't change that about me. I'm the crazy Florida man, Florida lady. But when you're, I'm just kidding. But when you're coming across a whole nation or the whole globe now, being able to represent and bring everyone's ideals together is such a different game. You're taking it up not just one notch, but like a couple hundred notches at that point. So, that collaboration was really vital, I think, to me. And I mean, the fact that we can still keep in touch to this day and, say, okay, what's going on in Oregon? What's going on in Texas? I think that's something that I'll never, I'll never forget. And it's really valuable to me. But, on that same token, so we were both able to serve for 2 years, which I think is something that's wonderful, and we're extremely blessed to be able to do that. But at that level, I think people sometimes may think, oh, like you're almost like untouchable at that point. But in fact, I think that's when I probably had the greatest like experiences and like interactions with people. Um, I don't know, for some reason, maybe sometimes people just think like once you're on the executive council, like you can't talk to people, but I think that was so untrue. And that was honestly where I felt like I could connect the most with people and really see, okay, like what can we do to better help your local chapter. And it was those
Right.
times where I would go to like local chapters where they were like, whoa, like this is someone who could maybe actually pass on my idea. And so, making sure that people's voices were heard and that they were able to be a contributing member of HOSA as a student, was something that was always really vital to me. And the experiences we had, I think, just kind of were formative, and we built upon those from our experiences as a member, a competitor, and then serving as different officers at different levels. But oh, look, Priya showed up wearing the same polo shirt as me.
Yes,
And
yes, we
look at
matched.
that. Wow, you matched with me. But those times in serving together, we really had to learn sometimes to think on our feet and be together. And like you said, sometimes we weren't always on the same page, but that was okay. So that was something different that we definitely had to learn as executive council members. And I think I just want to add a personal note that one of my biggest takeaways is, I think, as a leader, that doesn't also like necessarily mean that you have to be the greatest public speaker or know how to give a presentation really well. And Priya and I were kind of talking about this before we did this presentation, and that's so true. That's such a big part. If you have an empathetic heart, you are actually involved in making sure this organization progresses and people have the best experience out of it. I think that's what really counts. They can teach you how to speak. They can teach you how to be more comfortable in front of people. Even these type of experiences make us still nervous. So I just wanted to add that note in. And Priya, if you want to bounce off of that too, I know you probably have a little bit to add.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. Well, first of all, I just have to say, Sarah is probably one of the most incredible people I got to work with.
uh,
On my No, 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 don't
Now we're
blush.
just
I'm
complimenting
serious.
each other.
I know, right? But I just have to say, this workshop is titled "The Path to Leadership," and the reason that we put up these slides with different positions is not to highlight the position name. It's not to highlight,
Right.
member competitor, local officer, state officer, executive council member. That really doesn't matter. What really matters is the takeaways from each of those positions, because the reality is, again, you don't have to be in a super high position of power to be able to be a leader, right? And so the path
Yeah.
to leadership is really keeping yourself in check with your values and what you believe in, and making
Yeah.
sure that you love what you are doing every day, right? That's the path to leadership, in my opinion, right? Are you passionate? I always, my team knows that, like, my word is passion, because I always use it in all my speeches, and I use it when I talk to people, because I just truly think if you're not passionate about what you're doing and who you're serving, then why call yourself a leader in that division, right? Maybe it's
Yeah.
another division that you need to be in. So that's what I think is the path to leadership. And so it's just really incredible to be able to think about that. And like Sarah was saying, when we're getting training at the executive council level, it really became more about how can we take it back to our states and our chapters and be able to
Yeah.
help those people who started out like Sarah and me as a ninth grader or as a high school member, and be able to tell them, hey, you know what, like down the road, these are the opportunities that you would have lined up for you, or even right now, here's what you can do to better your experience. Because sometimes, we walk in as a member and we're like, what do we do, where do we start,
Mhm.
and so to be able to lend that helping hand becomes more prevalent, with the more
Yeah.
experience you get. And that's this whole concept of paying it forward in servant leadership. And so it was just really incredible to be a part of both my teams, and I had just great takeaways from both of them.
Totally agree, Priya. And we got a free pizza, so that's why I included this pizza picture. I thought that was a really special highlight of our time together, Priya.
Yeah, yes. The free pizza was amazing. Okay,
So
yes.
staying involved as alumni, you wanna start that one off, Priya?
Yeah, so staying involved as an alumni, right? So what do we do, right? We came out of executive council and we were like, well, now what? And so that's
Yeah.
a question that a lot of people ask is like, okay, when your term is ended, well, what do you do now? Well, you stay involved as alumni. So shout out to the
Yeah.
alumni division. If you're an alumni or if you're going to be an alumni, please make sure to join. Because there are
Hmm.
a lot of things that you can do. There are a lot of ways to be involved at the local, state, and national level. And one of the incredible opportunities I had was to be able to represent HOSA at a Rethink CTE conference, and just be able to work with other CTE members and alumni from across the nation and understand, how CTE is shaped and is set up, career and technical education in CTE, what can be done better, maybe to make students' experiences better. And at this level, we're discussing with people who sit on boards and at the Department of Education, and who really get to strategize what can we implement to be able to make students experiences better. So I thought that was an incredible way for me to be able to give back and bring my experiences as a HOSA member, officer, and alumni, and represent our organization. And so having those types of conversation, even so now, yeah, while this was a physical conference, right, and that's something that I was able to do as an alumni, it doesn't always have to be a conference that you attend to be involved
Hmm.
as an alumni. So I want to reiterate that, because what I took away from that conference is, again, the networking and having conversation and bouncing off ideas. It's there every part of your life. And it's like, we have to carry those skills forward everywhere we go. Right. And so when I
Yeah.
thought about all those different conversations, what different career and technical student organizations were doing, my mind was instantly thinking, okay, like, how is HOSA serving our students? Is there something that we can better implement to make their experiences better? And so, yeah, it was a really incredible experience. And just being able to meet people from all divisions was really cool.
So you talked about paying it forward, Priya, and I think, now it's almost like we're giving it back. Because all the time that was people invested in us, now I think now you're kind of almost having like the bird's eye view of things, and it's like, wow, or rather a reflection of things. So now I feel like, okay, now that I have kind of, I think, a comprehensive overview of my HOSA experience, that's still continuing, but as a member and an officer, now I feel like I'm still able to give back and kind of give my perspective and share with people how things worked for me or how they didn't work for me. So I recently had the opportunity to represent HOSA as an emergent leader at the United Nations, for the Idea Gen Women and Girls Summit. That was a mouthful. But it was a great opportunity and a great experience. And it really showed how HOSA is a global organization and how invested we are in the global health community. And now, even reflecting, now there's middle school chapters, which is something that's constantly on my mind now. And now that I'm home due to COVID, I'm like 10 minutes away from my middle school, and I'm like, I wonder if they have a HOSA chapter. So I think it's that type of mindset, and they don't, by the way. So we'll work on that. But it's that type of mindset. And Priya, maybe you can agree with me on this, but it's that type of mindset of always kind of having the organization that helped me so much and was so impactful for me and how I can still serve. And like Priya said, you don't have to always be at a conference to be an involved alumni. even just helping virtually or just consulting with maybe members. I mean, I've had people ask me, hey, could you help me just kind of figure out how to pick an event that's right for me? And I'll say, okay, well, let me like break out my guidelines and show you, how things are better fit for you. Or, hey, could you proofread my speech that I want to give? And it's those type of things that I think are almost the best part about being an alumni, is using all of your tools in your box to go back and help members. So that's I think kind of my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. Again, it's that mindset, right? So when you're an alumni of an organization, that clearly means that you've gone through it, you've racked up experiences, and now you're thinking, okay, well, what do I do with the skills? And well, there are two things you can do, right? One thing that you can do with your skills is, be able to help yourself in your career and, achieve the
Mhm.
goals that you've set for yourself. The other thing is helping others do that exact same thing. We're helping those who are just starting out get to the point where you are, because I mean, we have to think about it, right? It's not just us, it's not just our generation, it's the ones below us too. And that's that whole concept
Yeah.
of when you come out as an alumni, you think about all the things you've learned and you realize that, well, this organization gave so much to me, and it definitely needs to exist and be strong as we move forward, which
Yeah.
means we need to give back to those who are just starting out, right? To keep the organization going
Right.
strong. So it is exactly that mindset. It is exactly that mindset of, oh, it's given so much to me. What can I do to make sure that we're still going strong? And that's the thing, is that when you're an alumni, the biggest thing, I think a lot of people think, well, when it's done, when
Oh,
school's
sorry.
done, you're giving a little hint as to what's
Got
coming
a
up.
little ahead of myself. I'm sorry.
So a lot of
Oh,
people
okay,
think
go
that
again.
a lot of people think that, it's just, we don't know, what to do when you're done with school, and we kind of think that there's no way we can associate ourselves with HOSA anymore, but that's actually wrong, right? You can be an alumni of HOSA. HOSA is always going to be your organization. You know what I mean? So student led, alumni led, mentor led, that's this organization. And so you never have to really uh, you never really have to be apart from the organization. You can still stay involved in a different capacity. And that's what Sarah and I
Yeah.
have been doing over the years. So it's really
Yeah.
been incredible to be able to come back and to be able to, do workshops like this and be able to get to talk with you all, and answer some of your questions and kind of figure out together as a group, how can we stay involved and how can we better the organization. So yeah.
Yeah. And one last thing I just wanted to say with this slide is, it's really refreshing because I see a lot of faces on the screen that I'm familiar with. So it's that type of thing. I could reach out to somebody who's across the United States, and I know that we have that common thread of HOSA. So it's the same thing with alumni. Just having that common bond will really help kind of forge those connections and keep them going. But even now, like, I had the opportunity to work on the alumni newsletter, and that was something that, when I was creating it, I was like, wow, like, okay, as an alumni, what would I want to know about HOSA? If I was an alumni 2 years ago or 20 years ago, what are information and aspects that people would still want to know to help them stay involved, or to teach them something about HOSA that maybe, they had a lapse in time with HOSA, and now they can see, wow, like, we have so many representatives of, like, alumni representatives on the board of directors. And those are really exciting times for alumni to step up too. So that was just one thing I just wanted to say, as we kind of go on to our next slide, which I've shown you 3 times now, I think, on accident.
Okay, so personal and professional leadership, right? So this kind of all ties together with everything now.
Hmm.
Okay, this is a holistic look at everything that we've been talking about. We've been touching on this throughout the presentation because really the point is, again, it's really not, the role, it's really not the name of the leadership position that you're in, but it's about the qualities that you build over time and how you're going to use it to serve others. And so we learned
Hmm.
a lot about ourselves over these past, what, like 8, 9 years that we've been involved with the organization.
Yeah.
And it's been really incredible. I mean, personally, I would say I think I learned a lot about myself as far as what I enjoy. I like to collaborate, I like to speak, I like to strategize. On that note, with professional, I mean, this organization has given me so much and has shown me so much. I started out wanting to be a physician, and now I am actually changing tracks because I realized through this organization mainly that I have a huge passion for public health. I have a huge passion for policy. And so I'm actually starting my master in public health, in health policy in the fall. And I honestly, like, it wasn't really in the picture when I first started out in this organization, but over time, with the experiences that I've built, with the people that I've networked with, I mean, it's really shaped my career. And so I can't stress enough how important that networking is, you know, how important it is to have those conversations, to be able to attend workshops like you're doing right now, to make use of the platform, to be able to go. I know that the ILC platform has, you know, ways you can chat with those and those like workshop presenters, and you can actually like network through that chat messaging system. So please use it, you know, because you never know where one conversation will lead you. So yeah, Sarah, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, and as you were kind of mentioning those points, I was thinking, we've had all these great experiences, and that's something that I'll be, forever thankful for. And I think, when I first entered HOSA, I had the same kind of vision as you, right? I was like, I'm going to be a doctor, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is the path I'm going to take. And, I think really honestly, the more I got exposed to different fields in medicine and how many, you don't have to be a doctor to be in medicine. And I think that's something that's really, that it took me a while to comprehend and understand, and kind of almost allow myself to be exposed to that. And, that was a different state of vulnerability too. Just the fact that, okay, now maybe I realized maybe I don't want to be a physician. Maybe I want to go into something else. And HOSA, was so I told my sister yesterday. I said, if I had $1 for every time someone said, HOSA really helped me learn about other skills, or like, you wouldn't see me doing this 5 years ago, talking to a crowd of people. But it's really those type of skills that I think HOSA is able to build for people. And, the ability to network, that's a whole skill in itself. And I'm just so thankful that I was able to reach back out to these connections and say, hey, now I'm actually kind of interested in going to some type of medical sales, or working with device companies and trying to better healthcare and spread new products and services. And that's kind of where I was like, oh wait, maybe that's my new passion. And, maybe that's where all my skills can kind of, intersect and come together. But this slide has a lot of our experiences together. And one of the bottom left picture was us at the Public Health Leadership Scholars Program. And I don't know if it's the bottom left for you also. The one where I think there's like a Starbucks Frappuccino almost sticking out there. But, Priya and I both have a really interesting path with public health. So that was a sophomore in college when I was able to attend this. And I think as soon as I got back to school, I switched my major to public health, because I was like, maybe public health is really what I want to do. And, once I found that kind of intersected with community health, and in the fact that you're able to really make and champion these programs that will help communities, that's where I think my passion lied in. So it's really interesting how all these experiences, you might have 5-10 minute conversations with someone and then realize, wow, maybe that's actually what I want to do. So these type of development and leadership that we've had have all just been super helpful to us. And I know Priya kind of already touched on this, but that was kind of my wrap up, Priya. I think if you had anything else, we can move on to questions.
Yeah, I think we can definitely move on to questions right now.
Okay. We just think this picture of us is so funny. So we included it a couple of times, but both of our contact information is there too. So really, if you truly have any questions, Priya and I are happy to help in any capacity that we can. I know my email's a little bit long, but if you find us in any platform, we can always direct you to our email, and we're happy to answer anything. But I think we're good to open up for questions. Or if you want to type them out too, if you're a little shy.
I have a question.
Akash.
Yeah, hi.
Yes. Hi.
Hi.
What do you think was your guys's like greatest challenge as an executive council member?
Priya, you want to start?
Right. So let's see. I mean, I honestly think the greatest challenge is what I was talking about before. You have like several brilliant minds that come together, and you have to find a way to stay united and to like stay on the same page. And I think what we realized at that level is, again, because I've been in teams that are like, that are 5 members, and then you come to a
Mm,
team that can be up to 8 members. And so when
yeah.
you put that many minds together, plus our mentors and you know the advice that we're getting, and requests from, you know, chapter leadership and state leadership, when you put all of that together times maybe 8, right, for each member that's on the executive council, and you come together, you know, say for Washington Leadership Academy, or for maybe a special project that you and your team are working on, it's like, how do we come to the same page? And that
Yeah.
is where you really have to realize, okay, like there is a thing called compromise, right? Like it's going to
Hmm.
happen everywhere you go. It's important to know, you know, how are you going to build pros and cons lists? You know, how are you going to like work through it with your team members? And there's a way to do it politely and still stay close. I mean, Sarah's team, like our team, is still extremely close. You know what I mean? And we literally just got on a call and had our like reunion call, you know, a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
before ILC kicked off here. And we've been out of that team what, for like 2 years now? Or we've been, yeah, it's been
Yeah.
2 years, right?
Even-
It's been crazy, but it's like our team had several of those conversations. Okay, how do we want to make this work, right? And there's
mhm.
a way to do it without shutting someone's idea down, right? There's a way to do it
Yeah.
while saying that's a great idea, but let's see how to make that better. You know, let's see how it can expand to include everyone's wishes. And at the end of the day, there are experiences where, well, like, are we really going to be able to make everyone happy? It might be impossible, but I mean, it's our duty to try, right? And so I think those are kind
Yeah.
of like challenges, and but that's the outlook that we approached it with.
Yeah. I would almost say that I don't want to like copy you for you, but I almost want to say like my answer is very similar because it was
Yeah.
beautiful to have, you know, people from again across the United States coming together. But I think that was also one of the most challenging parts is everyone, you know, and a lot of us were coming right out of being a state officer or, you know, being super involved at the state level to where you had to kind of switch that mentality from being like, okay, well, this is what, you know, I've always known and this is what I've done in my state association. But how do I switch that and then combine it with 7 other people's perceptions and experiences at their state? And if anything, I think that was probably one of the most enlightening parts in being on the executive council is saying, oh, that's really cool how that state does X, or I don't know why I keep using X and Y, but you know, like those type
Well,
of examples. I know I'm so into math, I guess. But you know, it was those type of examples, Akash, specifically that you know when you're working with a group from across the United States and now across the globe, it's challenging sometimes to kind of condense everyone's thoughts. But at the end of the day, you know, our common thread is that we want to serve all 250,000 members. And even that leap in membership from when Priya and I were serving on the executive council is just, you know, it's really heartwarming to see that. So yeah, I think that was probably the most challenging aspect was bringing everyone together on some ideas, but I think it worked out.
yeah.
Thanks for that question.
Yeah. So we have some questions in the chat. And so I
Oh,
think it's cool to kind of address that. Yeah, Sarah, if you want to get that opened up.
let me try and
Um,
open the chat.
but the first question I see here is what do you think is the best quality in a leader, from Emma? So shout out to Emma. Thanks for the question. What I honestly, I've said it a million times, but I think passion. Again, like if you don't love what you do, if you're not in love with it, don't do it, right? Because you're putting yourself at a disservice, and like you're not serving others the best way you possibly can. So I love seeing passion in people. And I just think that you really, really have to love what you're doing, because that's how you're going to live your best life, right? You know, if you have a passion for what you're doing, you're automatically going to be 10 times better at your job. You know, it's not going to be a job anymore, right? It's not going to be something that you're like obligated to do, even though, you know, right, you are obligated to do it, obviously, but it doesn't feel like an obligation anymore. And so I think as a
Hmm.
leader, if you can embody passion, and if you can really understand that, hey, I love what I'm doing, like no one's making me lead, right? I lead because I love to lead. And so
Hmm.
if you embody that, I think that's probably one of the best qualities I see in leaders.
Yeah. I think one of the best qualities that I can see in a leader is almost a silent leader. someone that is able to kind of listen. And I think that that's another thing I've really learned throughout these years is, sometimes when people think of leaders, they think of people who just, kind of want to dominate a conversation or, always have their thoughts heard. But I think there's something really beautiful about just listening to a team or, a whole organization and then kind of condensing those thoughts together. So being able to kind of almost lead from behind and work with what the group has and then push it towards a better tomorrow, towards tomorrow. Shameless plug. That's something that I think as a leader is really vital. And even I think sometimes people can get really caught up in a title or just get so excited that they're quote unquote in charge of something. And I think that power trip is what makes me kind of uneasy when I see leaders that are maybe taking advantage of a group or using it to benefit themselves rather than serving the organization that got them there or serving the members that elected them to get there. And I think that has to do with a lot of responsibility on the person that got elected. So that I think is my takeaway.
Absolutely.
And I'm not able to pull up the chat, Priya. So if you're, because I'm sharing my screen at the same time, I just
I
might not
got
know
you.
how to
Yeah.
use Zoom
So
effectively.
so I have the chat pulled up. So I'll read these questions out. So the next one that we have is, how did you deal with the pressure while being in the team? And so this is a great question, right? So the thing is that it kind of depends. I feel like pressure is it's very personal, right? We don't know what exactly stresses someone out all the time. And I think, what stresses me out may not stress Sarah out the same way. So I guess for me, personally, right, like that's the best way to put it is everyone has different stressors if you really think about it. But I think what really got me through anything that stressed me, whether that be school or whether that, I mean, a lot of times, right? It's a lot of times when people think about pressure, it's like being in school and being an officer, right? And I think there was another question about this in the chat. So I may be addressing two at the same time, but a lot of times what gets me through, again, number one is passion. Do I love what I'm doing? Because then it doesn't seem like an obligation anymore. And number two, honestly, is my team. If you have a team that works together, that communicates effectively, right? Effectively to where you understand that you can go to a team member and say, hey, I have a lot on my plate. Would you mind helping out? Not taking advantage of them, but also realizing that you would do the same for them, right? There are a lot of times that Sarah and I have even reached out to each other and say, hey, I have this going on, or I have to be at this meeting, can we take care of this? And she's done the same with me and I've taken care of it. And I think having that effective communication, now granted, like Sarah and I met sure when we were state officers, but we really didn't become close until we were on our team together. And it's beautiful to see kind of how that developed, because we were in a team where we felt comfortable to go to each other and say, this is what's going on. And I think that makes you an even better leader when you're honest with yourself, when you're honest with your capabilities, what you signed up for and what you're able to do, because then you're not slowing down the process for anyone. Right. And so your pressures then don't impact everyone. You can sort through them and, take help from others. And then, when you're ready, you'll be able to do the same for the next person. Right. And so that's kind of how I see it. Sarah, you want to add on to that?
Yeah. So I have kind of 2 points with this. So first, I think something that was really vital for me was always having some type of support system. So our team was really great. I see Arjun on the call too. So thank you, Arjun, for your support and being here. Just having a team that will, like Priya said, just be there for you if, you're not able to do something. Because honestly, I mean, I don't know if Priya felt the same way, but when I was an officer, like I literally took it as a full-time job. Like I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. These are my obligations. And I always held that to a really high standard. Now, pressures between school and being an officer, I'll be very frank, like that was something that was a real challenge for me. So I guess maybe that can tie back into a challenge of being on the executive council, or really in any leadership position, because I always felt like it was so easy for me to go and transition into my HOSA mode and like work on HOSA things, because that was something that I genuinely enjoyed and still do. So that was something that, that I did feel a little bit of pressure of, was, kind of separating in my mind, okay, I have these obligations to serve HOSA, but I also have to make sure that I'm doing well academically and, able to complete everything I need to in school and in life socially. And, there are times where pressure can kind of lead to trade-offs. So, I would sometimes have to trade off going somewhere because I knew my obligations lied to, attending a great state leadership conference and being able to make some new friends. So, those trade-offs always came with pros on both sides. So that was kind of my take on that.
Absolutely. And this kind of goes hand in hand. There's another question in the chat saying, any advice for
Mhm.
people that want to try to achieve a leadership role, yet are worried they will struggle to balance schoolwork with leadership responsibilities? And I think that goes hand in hand with this too, right? It's like, those
Yeah.
are kind of basically the experiences, right? Is how are you in school and still
Yeah.
being on and being able to coordinate around everyone's schedule and different time zones, right? And get on calls together and
Yeah. Oh my gosh, different time zones. Yeah.
right. So a lot of the times,
Yeah.
how to do that. But again, I really do think it comes down to, can you communicate effectively with your team? Almost broke my watch here, but can you communicate effectively with your team? And
Yeah.
do you all understand each other? And a lot of times it takes that team bonding. It really, I would say, any team that you're in, please, please, please make an effort to get to know and bond with your team, whether it's virtually, in person, and whatever platform it is that you can use. Conversation can be done through any platform. Have the conversations,
Mhm.
right? Get to know the people on your team, understand who they
Yeah.
are, understand what makes them who they are, and understand, what are their best practices. And you'll soon realize, what are these people's strengths, what are my strengths, and what are each of our
Mhm.
weaknesses, and now how do we mesh together, right? If we think about it in that manner, we can make it work no matter what. If any one of us on this call were on a team together, I truly believe we can make it work, right? If we
Yeah.
have those conversations. And so, yeah, so that's what I would say. I want to try to get to some of these other questions. Thank you guys for sending them in. So we have a question saying, how did HOSA allow you to network with health professionals around the world? Thank you, Arjun, for that question.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
so around the world, right? Because we are international. It's actually really cool. One of the best ways to do that is through the ILC, whether it's virtual or in person. Um, Met a lot of people from international chapters there. But I also think that once you realize um, what your passion is, then it kind of points you in the direction of who you want to reach out to. And that's kind of when I started having conversation with my mentors. Who's the best in this industry to reach out to if I want to learn more about it. Sarah, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think part of speaking with healthcare professionals is sometimes you feel like, okay, I'm maybe just a student, or I'm just this young professional trying to make it in the healthcare world. But really, I've learned sometimes you just got to be bold and just say, hey, I'm super interested in whatever you're doing, and I would love to learn from you. Because I think something also that was super vital to our pathway in leadership, Priya, was having great mentors and having a
Mhm.
super, and it goes back to support, like having a super supportive you know chapter, having a super supportive region, having a super duper supportive state association, and even working our way up to the international level, just having someone to always guide you and help you, because there's a lot of people who have already done their time through HOSA and have a lot of great experiences. And those healthcare industry leaders, I think, truly are looking for people to help become the next them, or guide them on that path. So a lot of it was just being bold. And now I'm just going on LinkedIn all the time, and you see someone with a really cool title and say, hey, maybe that's what I want to do, and just
Yeah.
saying, hi, I'm Sarah, this is something that I'm super interested in, and just taking that step. Because if it takes 5 minutes of your time to write a couple sentences just explaining to someone, it may be worth a really, really valuable relationship in the long run. So that's my take on that one, Priya.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. So we have a question here saying, at what stage did you start feeling like the new person and felt that you really started to understand HOSA, right? What was that stage where we felt like, okay, we get this organization? Here's my answer to that. I'm still learning. I am still
Yeah,
learning.
I was
I
like,
mean, when I say that, like, you learn every step of the way, you really do, right? And so now your experiences make you feel more at home with an organization. So I would
mhm,
say I started to feel more at home the more I put myself out forward and got involved in service projects, the more I put myself out forward and started to network. And I would probably say, within like the first year of me being a member, that's when I realized that I need to start doing these things more. When I started doing that more is when I felt more at home with the organization, but I'm still learning every single day about how this organization works, the people we have in it, what goes on in the back end of being able to network
yeah,
and set up partnerships with different associations. I mean, there's so much that you learn every single day.
Yeah. I think that, again, like you said, kind of the more you take initiative, the more you feel at home. I mean, I was that person that would, I mean, I still do check like the HOSA website every week or so just to see what's going on and staying current. But those steps, but I think when I really started to reach out and involve myself, not just in like service project organizations, but also just being brave at conferences and saying, hi, I'm Sarah, where are you from? And, what's your story? How did you get involved in HOSA? Those are really vital steps for me. I think one of my like fundamental key things that I can think about is, when I had the opportunity to attend the Washington Leadership Academy, I think those were super formative years for me in HOSA, because I think, when I went to previous NLCs and ILCs, I was able to, yes, connect with people from different states, and maybe that was just at a member competitor level, so I was a little bit more shy. But when I went to WLA and you're in groups with other state officers or
Right.
other local leaders, like, and now that the fact that WLA is open to local leaders, like I wish I would have had those opportunities. So it's so
Right.
nice to see that we can start those experiences at a younger age now. But yeah, I think when I really was in groups with other state officers, I was like, wow, like HOSA is such a big deal to them as it is for me.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. So we have two questions here. They're two different questions, and I think we can talk about them though together, right? So one says, what advice do you have for someone who is seeking to become a state officer? And the next one is, what were some of your responsibilities as state and international officers? And I think this is kind of a conversation that we have all together.
Yeah.
Is when it came again, so when it came to like state office, right? I think running for state office, I think, is just realizing, okay, you love this organization enough to where you want to learn more about the back end and learn how to give
Yep.
opportunities to your local members. And so if you're at a point where you
Mm-hmm.
feel like, okay, I have these really cool experiences, I have ideas and I want to put them to use, run for state office, run for state office and get involved that way if you can, because it's really cool to kind of sit at the state level and be able to work the back end process and see what partnerships that you can create at a state level for your members. And that is those are kind of the roles that we had as state and international officers: is how do we maintain partnerships, how do we create new partnerships, how do we bring new ideas to the table, right? Whether it be like webinars, whether it be a 5K with a Surgeon General, whether it be whatever it is that we're brainstorming on a daily basis. I mean, people are throwing ideas out there all the time. So I think when you realize that you have ideas and you love this organization, then put your foot forward and run.
Yeah. And I would even add on to that and say, don't run for a state position just because you think it'll be a super cool title, or
Yeah.
you'll be able to go to all these like great things. Like, yes, those experiences are something that are, it's a benefit of running for state office. But honestly, you put in a lot of hard work on both positions. But as a state officer, I really felt like I had a super close connection with every different region in my state. And, just being able to go to a local high school or, even a middle school and say, this is HOSA, this is why I love it. And I hope you all feel the same way. And if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Like, those were the experiences that I got out of being a state officer that, were priceless. And then, that kind of ties into our responsibilities at the executive council level. As a state officer, you were so used to going and talking to different organizations and different schools, and then that translates super nicely to your role or your duties and responsibilities as an executive council member, going to speak with professional partners, and still going to different state leadership conferences now. So I think those would probably be like the two really big takeaways of being a state officer, and then our responsibilities in both regards.
Absolutely. And we'll do one last question here. How did you come across those opportunities, like workshops or conferences, as members and alumni? And is it possible to experience those opportunities without running for a HOSA leadership position? Absolutely, I would say.
For sure.
Yeah, like absolutely. And we need that, right? So if you're about to be an alumni and you want to give back to this organization, please contact Sarah and please contact me, because we will point you in the direction to get involved. because there are tons of things you can do without being in an actual leadership position or title, right? Sarah and I aren't on the executive council anymore, right? But the thing is that like we find ways to use the experiences we've built over time to give back to the organization. And I would say if you have ideas or things that you maybe want to share with those who are still in the organization as a member, you can definitely apply to do a workshop, or you can definitely even forget the ILC for a second, even throughout the year in your states,
Yeah.
in your local communities, there are a lot that you can do to stay involved as alumni. Find the closest HOSA chapter and get involved as an alumni. Say, hey, I was a part of this organization. This is what I've learned. These are the ideas I've gained over time. How can I help you? Right? What can I do
Yeah.
for you? And if you like, literally, that's what Sarah's saying, right?
Yeah.
In that middle
It's
school
true.
chapter, say hi. Like, how can we
Yeah.
put you in, and how can we help you get started here? We get so excited when we talk about this, but it's only because, I know every single one of us in this call has ideas. I know every single one of us here have a passion for this organization, or we wouldn't be here. And so it's about how do you take those ideas to the next level, and you don't have to be in a specific role to do that. If you just, it takes one conversation, right? It takes you putting your foot forward, finding a HOSA chapter, finding a HOSA member and saying, how can I help you? I want to help you. What can I do for you? And I think that's kind of how you get started with that.
Yeah, I agree. And there are so many different stages of being an alumni. And we had an alumni networking call last night. And I was sitting there and I was like, wow, there are alumni members who just came out of high school, or just came out of college. And those experiences and that mindset is so much different than alumni who are seasoned and who have been in their profession for a while. So something that's always been really important to me, and I think something that HOSA always had for me, was a mentor. And I know I kind of talked about this before, but it is something that I think is really vital. And if you can be a mentor to somebody else, I think that's one of the greatest things that you can do as an alumni. Because I mean, in essence, really the competitions, the conferences, like that's all great. And, that really helps you kind of develop all these different skill sets, but it's what you do and how you give back that I think really, really shows your alumni involvement. So again, like Priya said, we're happy to find ways for you to get involved. Whether that be, I mean, really something that I think about is, okay, let me look at all the people who have helped me get this far. Like those are the people that you want to say, thank you. How can I help my local chapter? How can I help my state organization? Can I judge an event? Great. Can I, help out at a regional conference, or help out at a conference of some kind? Is there anything I can do? Can I send out newsletters? Can I be a mentor for you in this event? Can I proofread something for you? It's those little things that I think add up to being a really great and involved alumni member.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one last thing I'll add on to that, right? Because I just thought of it as you were saying it is, I mean, obviously we were members, right? Which means we, and all of you are members. And you are a part of a local chapter somewhere, you're part of a chapter, either state or local chapter. So I've definitely done things where, I'll drive past my high school, go say hi to some teachers, and like just impromptu talk, they'll be like, oh, why don't you share with the class, what you're doing, or what you did when you were in HOSA, like things like that. And it's just things like, it doesn't even have to be a setup opportunity, right? Again, it all goes
Right.
back to conversation. What conversations are you having with people? How are you helping each other? It takes you a long way. And in hindsight, hindsight's always 2020, right? So when we look back and we think about how we started, Sarah's like, yep. When we look back and we think about how we started and what we learned, I mean, I really just think that network, communicate. Like those are the two things that are going to make this experience meaningful for you. And through that, you'll realize that a lot of things don't have to be fully set up opportunities. You simply having a conversation with someone at your local high school, your local HOSA chapter, is going to help them in the long run, and is going to, allow them opportunities to better themselves. So yeah, that's what I would say. There are multiple ways to do it. Please contact Sarah and me if you have any questions. We will gladly help you figure out, your roles as leaders throughout your years. And on to alumni as well. So thank you so much for being here today, and just allowing us to share with you our stories, and for giving us your time in the morning, for some of you, the evening for some of you, all these different time zones here. So thanks so much for joining, you all. Once again, don't hesitate to reach out. We're always here for you. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of this conference. Take advantage of all the opportunities on that platform. Have fun. Sarah, is there anything you want to add?
I just want to say thank you all for joining us. And, we do know it's kind of early, so we really appreciate you all logging in and just listening to what we have to say. Again, just to reiterate, we're both here for you. If you need any type of assistance or want to bounce any ideas off of us, we're happy to help because we're people just like you in quarantine right now. So
Yep,
with
that's right.
thank you again. And thanks for staying, 11 minutes over. We greatly appreciate it. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.